This year's rookie class has been weird. Leading up to the draft, there was a lot of excitement, especially for the big three of Holmgren, Smith, and Banchero. We then saw Holmgren tear it up in the summer league, which got everyone even more excited, but sadly, he would go down with a season-ending injury. But when the actual regular season kicked off, excitement actually reached all-time highs with how impressive guys like Mathurin and Keegan Murray were from the jump. But since then, we've seen even the top guys go through some pretty big ups and downs. It doesn't really seem like this class is getting much attention. It's been one of the few years where we don't seem to have those late round surprises. It's extremely early, everything is going to change, but let's talk about some teams that are probably regretting their decisions from the recent 2022 draft. I do this every season and it always seems to get a ton of people angry, but as tough as it is to admit for some, you get a pretty good idea about most players even halfway through their rookie year. Just go take a look at the last 5 I've done. But let's start with a team that I actually didn't mind their decision at the time, but I think they're wishing they could take it back. We're talking about the Charlotte Hornets. Coming into the draft, there seemed to be a very clear priority, coming off a pretty promising year, and that was the center position. Holding the 13th pick, if they had the opportunity, I think most expected them to go in favor of Jalen Duren. Now, they actually had the chance to get him at 13 if they wanted to, but they actually traded that selection to the Knicks for a 2023 first rounder and 4 future second round picks. Given the fact they still had another first round pick 2 picks later, a selection that they used to grab a center in Mark Williams, this felt like the right decision. But I think in retrospect, sticking with Duren and using that 15th pick to explore trade opportunities or even taking another player was probably the better route. Despite the Hornets sitting with one of the worst records in the league, we've barely gotten the chance to see Williams out there, appearing in just 18 games, averaging 7 points and 5 rebounds. Now, it's not like Duren has been blowing everyone away, but his two-way impact and explosiveness has a lot of people extremely excited, especially considering he is the youngest player in the league. Now, what's interesting here is it doesn't really matter how you look at this, it really just wasn't a great trade. Even if you think the value and or future of Williams and Duren are extremely close, that first round selection right now is going to be the 29th pick in the draft. So the question really is Mark Williams in the 29th pick in next year's draft better than Jalen Duren and let's say AJ Griffin or Tari Eason, the next 2 non-centers to come off the board after Williams? I think the answer to that is relatively clear, but you guys tell me your thoughts in the comments below. In my opinion, the Hornets are actually in a pretty weird spot right now, and they're probably just hoping the draft lottery bails them out. And to be honest with you, I kind of hope it does. Out of the bottom 4 teams in the league currently, Charlotte is easily my favorite Wembanyama landing spot. Today's video is sponsored by PrizePicks. It's a sports pick'em platform legal in over 30 US states where you just pick more or less on player stats for now up to 25 times their entry. I'm on PrizePicks all the time. For me, it's just a great way to actually have fun watching a Spurs vs Pistons game, and tonight, I'm feeling pretty good about our 10x entry. I'm going Jason Tatum points. He's been on fire lately, going over in 4 of the last 5. I'm also going with Jalen Brunson, who hasn't gone over in the last few games, but that's given us the opportunity to get a lower square than we've seen. I'm then going Zach LaVine rebounds. He's gone over in 4 of the last 5. And then lastly, PrizePicks actually has a free square going on for Joe Burrow this weekend. All he needs to get is a single yard, so make sure you do that free square before the game. All this happens, my $20 entry becomes $200. And for new accounts, we also have another promo on top of the Burrow square. If you click the link in the description and use code JIMMER, you're going to get a deposit match up to $100. Thank you PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. But now we go to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and this one feels weird as overall, they had an incredible draft. It seems like they definitely hit with Jalen Williams, and while we haven't seen him in an actual game, I think you're blind if you don't think Chet is the real deal. So despite the great draft, I don't think they're ecstatic about their decision to trade for the 11th overall pick, which they used to draft Ousmane Dieng. Now, as a prospect, he was really interesting, a huge wing with a super promising ball in the hand skill set, but there was no denying he was extremely raw. And sure, a bright future could still definitely be ahead, but there's no denying he hasn't looked all that impressive. And if we redrafted tomorrow, I don't think he's going anywhere close to the 11th overall pick in the draft. He's played in just 14 games so far, averaging 4 points and 3 rebounds, shooting with just 42-29 splits. Now, drafting is one thing, but they actually gave up a pretty big haul to bring him in, sending the Knicks 3 first-round picks in 2023. Now, that sounds a lot worse than it actually is. All of them are at least lottery protected, but that's still a pretty significant haul. I mean, one of those selections the Knicks used in that Duren trade that we were just talking about, a selection that only happened 2 picks later. So while there isn't necessarily a bunch of players the Thunder wish they took there instead, I think it's safe to say they're wishing they passed on that trade. Now we go to the Washington Wizards, and you can probably put them in this video just about every season. They're on currently one of the worst drafting streaks I think we've ever seen, and this Rui trade only emphasizes that. He was arguably their biggest hit in the last 4 years, and he was sent to the Lakers for Kendrick Nunn and 3 second-round picks. Since 2018, they've had 4 top picks: they used those to draft Rui, Denny, Corey Kispert, and most recently Johnny Davis. Pretty rough. Now there's no question some, probably most of the blame needs to be put on this front office, but I truly don't fault them for this Davis selection. After a breakout sophomore season at Wisconsin, he was looked at as one of the best shot creators in this class. The Wizards ended up getting him at 10, and it really felt like the consensus was this was amazing value, and there was no chance he'd be on the board 1 or 2 picks later. Now sadly for Wizards fans, it became relatively clear almost immediately he wasn't the prospect we all thought. I got to see Davis a couple times in person at the Summer League, and I was just shocked at how much he was struggling to create space or even knock down easy looks. Those struggles continued in the preseason, and when it came time for the regular season, there just wasn't a role. He's played just 10 games so far, averaging 1 point. We've definitely seen players take massive jumps, but they're hard to count on, and I'm not sure you're going to find many that were averaging 1 point as a rookie and went on to have a lot of success. Most of his time so far this year has been spent in the G League, where he's averaged 12 points, shooting less than 41% from the field. With guys like Jalen Williams, Jalen Duren, and AJ Griffin coming off the board shortly after, there's just no way the Wizards aren't regretting their 2022 draft. Now our next one's gonna get everybody going, but what doesn't get the NBA community going nowadays? We're talking about the Houston Rockets' decision to take Jabari Smith. Now you've got to feel for the Rockets and Rockets fans. They were fooled. Practically the entire post-lottery draft process, they thought they were getting Paolo Banchero. All signs pointed to the Magic going Jabari Smith. All signs pointed to the Thunder going with Chet Holmgren. But in a span of less than 24 hours, everything changed. Every hour, Banchero's odds to go number 1 just got better and better, and eventually the Magic went with it. Now there's absolutely no room to blame the Rockets whatsoever. Their decision at 3 was made for them. It didn't matter what team was there. After Banchero and Holmgren went off the board, Jabari Smith was going at 3. I mean, we're talking about a guy that, as we just said, 20 hours before the draft, was poised to go number 1 overall. Now we first got to see him on the NBA court during the Summer League, where it was okay, but he really wasn't turning heads. Then the season started, and while he's had his moments, for the most part, it's been pretty disappointing. He's averaging 12 points and 7 rebounds, shooting an atrocious 39% from the field and 31% from 3. I mean, think about what would we be saying if he actually went number 1. Now, I definitely still think a bright future is ahead, given his combination of defense and shooting, that while we quite haven't seen so far, I can assure you will come. I am, though, starting to get concerned about his ceiling, and seeing guys like Keegan Murray, who's putting up an insanely efficient 15 a game recently, the crazy scoring upside of a guy like Mathurin, or even someone like Jaden Ivey, I think the Rockets are probably regretting their decision. Lastly, we've got the New Orleans Pelicans, who ended up going with Australian point guard Dyson Daniels with the 8th overall pick in the draft. At the time, it felt like an okay decision. They definitely needed help in the backcourt, but going with such a raw player when they were ready to compete felt like a weird fit. So far this season, he's kind of been what we expected. A pretty well-rounded player, but extremely raw, especially with anything that involves scoring the basketball. He's averaging less than 5 points and 3 assists, shooting 44% from the field and 33% from 3. Now at the time of the draft, there was actually a lot of reports that they had some trade-out opportunities. It's hard to say how much validity there is to those reports, but if true, you would have to think they have some regrets staying put in favor of Dyson Daniels. I really like how this team is constructed. I like that when fully healthy, they have playmakers all over this roster, but leading up to the deadline, seeing the success of the McCollum trade last season, they're a team to keep your eye on. I think making a move for a point guard that hopefully can take more responsibility off McCollum's shoulders is probably the right move. And in the event that a trade actually happens, it'd be no surprise to see Daniels in that deal. I had really high hopes for this draft class. I still do for a couple guys, but I gotta say, I've been relatively let down, especially with the non-top picks. But I want to know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. How are you feeling about this class, and what draft night decisions do you think teams are regretting? If you guys like the content, smash the like and sub button, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.